Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to another episode of the Iron Life Podcast. I am your host, Chris Tutela, here to help you live the Iron Life, and I have a great guest lined up for you today. My guest on today's show is Chris Ulbricht. He is the owner of Garden State BJJ in Red Bank, New Jersey. He is a third-degree black belt, and he's been training Jiu Jitsu now for 17 years. And Chris and I really had a great conversation. So whether you are somebody who's just listening to this because you like to hear about fitness and about martial arts, or if you are a gym owner, there's going to be a lot of value in this episode for you guys. We really go in depth on a lot of different things, like Chris's journey through martial arts and business ownership. And we covered a lot of stuff today, guys, and I really think you're going to enjoy it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with my man, Chris Ulbricht. Chris, welcome to the Iron Life Podcast, man. Thank you so much for taking the time out of the day to come on.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to kind of delve into whatever we get into.
Absolutely, man. So why don't we kick this off with what got you into Jiu Jitsu? Let's start there. Let's get a little bit of a backstory on you, kind of who you are, what you do, and what got you into this in the first place.
Sure. So I, like a lot of us, I did traditional martial arts as a kid. And like a lot of us, I didn't stick with it past my 10 or 11 years old. Became a teenager, became, a little bit of a brat, got a little pudgy, I would say, as well. And, at some point I realized that I needed some direction. I needed some purpose. I think, I just saw the UFC and I saw how disciplined they were with their training and how, they put everything into those matches. And, as a kid that was kind of like playing in bands and like looking at high school as just this time to network and have fun, I think I didn't have so much structure in my family. And I think that I sought out that structure and I sought out that purpose. And I had a lot of trouble doing difficult things. And I think on some level I knew that I needed something to push me and to teach me that I could do difficult things. So I started training when I was 17, and it was really, really hard. I remember just, kind of looking at people grappling, and it was like reading a book in another language. I just didn't even know what I was looking at.
Yeah.
I would get thrown around, I just kept going back. I wanted to improve. I wanted to reach my potential. And that's long story short, that's still what I'm trying to do to this day.
Now, how old were you when you started training?
I was 17.
You were 17. Okay,
Yeah.
so you weren't like one of those 8-year-olds that were rolling around. You started a little bit later, but still, how old are you now?
I'm 34.
Okay, so you've been training for quite some time.
Yeah.
Got it. So what were some of those things that Jiu Jitsu did for you in those early days? So you mentioned some structure and stuff like that. And I think so many people talk about that, and I talk about it a lot as far as fitness goes. But what did it do for you specifically as far as like helping you gain structure, and how did that kind of carry over into your personal life?
Yeah. So I think it made me, it shifted my focus from the things that I enjoyed, which was just like goofing around and hanging with my friends,
Yeah.
to the things that brought me purpose, which was, getting my mind, my body, and my spirit developed, right? So, if you looked at 16, 17-year-old Chris, that was someone that was never pushed to their edge to where, I had to create a new edge, right?
Mm-hmm.
But through jiu-jitsu, I've gotten pushed, spiritually, physically, to the point where I thought that was my limit, and then it wasn't. So now I created a new limit.
Yeah.
I think people, if you ask people what they want, a lot of people would say that they want to be happy, but I think the more important thing is purpose and growth. So I went from a focus of chasing happiness and fun, which is great, right? That stuff is good. But I think the more important thing is growth. And I think that martial arts is one of the best vehicles for growth.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think Tony Robbins said, like, if you were to define happiness in one word, it would be progress. So progress, growth, kind of the same things. So I agree with that entirely. Like, when you see yourself working towards something meaningful and you actually see yourself improving and getting better, that bleeds over. That leads to you feeling more fulfilled. It leads to you feeling more confident and seeing what is actually possible. Because if you're like, dude, if that guy is trying to strangle me, and even if he does, and I get my ass kicked over and over again, but I keep showing up and I keep getting better, that just kind of shows you what else you could do. It makes the other things seem so much easier. At least for me, it does. I'm sure it's probably a common thing, right?
For sure. And I think that there's just so many different levels of growth.
Right.
And, one of the things is mentally and spiritually. And I think, one thing that a lot of people look to do, and, I still struggle with it from time to time. I'm in my head. I'm thinking about what I need to do later. I'm thinking about, what happened earlier. But presence.
Right.
And for people that are trying to develop being in the present moment, there's nothing like putting someone who's trying to choke you to bring you to the present moment, right? Yep. So of course, it's great to be able to meditate and sit and think about nothing. I've always found that hard to do.
Yeah.
But when we're in class, when we're sparring, you can't be thinking about something later. Mm-hmm. And the more time that you spend in the present moment, it's like, it's going to a physical place. The more you go to a physical place, the easier it is to remember how to get there.
Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu is one of the easiest ways I found to take people to the present moment so that they could eventually find that in other times as well.
That is so true, man. And I think whenever you're doing something really difficult, right? So in fitness, if you're doing a really brutally hard back off set of squats, or if you're rolling in jiu-jitsu, or if you're sparring in boxing, or whatever the thing is, whatever your thing, even if you're playing chess, you're doing something that's really difficult, that is a form of meditation.
For sure.
Like you said, your mind, you can't wander anywhere else. Like, you're right there in that fucking moment. And that is, I think, like you said, it's the mental, it's the spiritual side of things that I think a lot of people don't see. They might not realize that. They look at, in my world, they might look at fitness at like the external, right? Like, I want to get leaner, I want to get stronger, I want to build more muscle. In jiu-jitsu, they might look at it as like, oh, that's cool, I want to learn how to strangle somebody. Yeah. But they don't realize what is actually happening internally and the benefits that kind of present themselves over time, because we have so much shit, so much stress that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, man. You're thinking about work, you're thinking about business, you're thinking about the bills that need to be paid. But jiu-jitsu is something for me that keeps me, like, there is no other thought going on. Like, you have to be locked in, right? And if your mind does wander,
you'll be brought back.
You'll be brought back pretty damn quickly.
Yeah. It's definitely like what they say about like that flow state, right? So any of these things is a flow state or a peak state. And when you get into that, you're in that present moment. So yeah, there's definitely a spiritual side of it, and a mental side of it. And I love all physical activity. I know, we're kind of talking about lifting too. Yeah. And one thing that, is very important, even from like my yoga practice and stuff like that, is getting out of your head and reconnecting to your body or reconnecting to your breath. So a lot of times people, they're I've had this before where, maybe in a time of stress, I'm in these loops. I'm trying to do these calculations of, well, if I do this, then I do this, then I do this, and I got to do this tomorrow. And I've realized that I've detached from my body and I've detached from my breath. And, to your point of getting on that squat rack, you're going to reconnect to your body. You're going to be very connected and in tune with your legs and your core. And grounding yourself back into this, physical body. Right. Whereas, it's such a simple phrase, but people tell you, get out of your head.
Right.
and the best way to get out of your head is to get into your body.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true, dude. And I'll tell you one thing with jiu-jitsu that I think, tell me what you think here, but because I do believe that especially men, we need to get that aggression out, that physical, we need some type of physical outlet. And I'm sure that's true for women too, but I know especially for men, guys get into more fights, all those things. And I think getting humbled in jiu-jitsu by a guy who is a fraction of your size is one of another very rewarding thing, because it puts you in your place. It also makes you see like, oh shit, maybe I'm not that guy who I thought I was, or maybe it's just good for me to know that there's somebody out there that could do this to me if shit really hit the fan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that jiu-jitsu, consistent jiu-jitsu practice, makes you much less likely to give that guy that cut you off the finger. Yeah, because you don't know, right?
And you don't really care as much either, right? Like, not to cut you off, but
sure.
for me, I know that like after jiu-jitsu, after a day of training, like if somebody cuts me off and gives me the finger, I'm like, give him a wave and a smile. I don't care. I have no desire to now try to fight that guy. Yeah. When I just had 5 guys trying to strangle me an hour ago.
For sure. I think there's 2 points I want to, because you bring up a really great question about, how jiu-jitsu kind of prevents those altercations. And I think one thing is that old phrase that hurt people, right? Yep. So a lot of times people are walking around with low confidence. They're walking around with these wounds that they have sometimes from their childhood, from maybe their parent was their first bully, and they're waiting for anything to be that physical or verbal altercation so they could get it out.
Right.
And some people, the darkest thing is some people will see a guy like me and be like, you know what? I can't hurt myself, but I could get that guy to hurt me. Mm-hmm. And it's almost a form of self-harm that they want to. And when you do martial arts, when you do that, anything that's working on yourself, and you heal some of those wounds and you build that confidence, you're not walking around hurt trying to self-medicate by getting into these altercations and getting that energy out that way.
Right.
And I think another aspect, and it's something that I really believe with the kids program too, is jiu-jitsu is a martial art. We're learning to choke people, we're learning to arm bar. It's very real stuff. Mm-hmm. And when you are on the right team and you build the right culture, you're surrounding yourself in an environment where you're giving and receiving grace, right? So, you catch me in an arm bar, you could break my arm. Right. But the fact that I tap and you let go maybe starts to build the trust that I have in someone else.
Yeah.
And you also get to practice, I'm all the way at level 10. We're drenched in sweat. We're in a peak state. I got this arm, but I'm ready to, be merciful and let it go.
Right.
So the fact that, you could surround yourself with people that you trust, that, you can accept their grace and their trust.
Yeah.
That, you could be in total vulnerability. And then also you could catch someone else in a spot where you're literally around their carotid arteries.
Right. And
you could pull it back and let them go and high five. I think that's also part of what, avoids those altercations, where you build trust in your fellow.
I never looked at it that way. That's pretty interesting, because it teaches you like that you don't have to hurt that guy.
Yeah.
Right? Like you might have this hurt in you, and because you're hurt, you want to hurt other people. And this is something where it's like, I could hurt you, but I am letting it go.
Or he could have hurt me, and
he let it go.
And he let me go.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it.
I tell the parents, and I don't know if it's going to land. I don't know if this ever lands. I don't know if this should be recycled from, thrown out from my talking points.
Yeah.
But I say that the kids' jiu-jitsu class is kind of like the dog park, where they're learning what kind of play is acceptable. What's too hard.
Right.
What's the right amount. Because then you get, kids that never have roughhoused or who have never built that sense, that like are in the playground to shove a kid over
and arm barring them.
Yeah. Or they just have no concept of like what is the right amount of contact, what is the right amount of, and my kids in the kids program developed like very good control. Like, you know, my older teenagers could roll with someone very small and keep them safe.
Right.
Just in the way that, you know, my pit bull boxer, who you know I love, could play with a little dog because she's been acclimated to rougher play, so she knows how to.
Right.
So I don't know if this point is.
I think it makes sense. That makes total sense. Yeah, there's a lot of kids that if they don't understand their own strength, if they don't know how to control it, right, it's very hard for them, like if they're on a playground, to like actually play at the right level, right?
Yeah.
Jiu-Jitsu teaches you that.
Or even to know if someone has contact with them, to be like, whoa, that was beyond playing.
Right.
Some kids get bullied
Right.
and they don't even know they're getting bullied.
Right. Right.
You could build that meter that, oh, that's you know, that hurt.
Right.
That was too much.
Right.
And my goal is, you know, for them to, of course, first be able to say, hey, no, that was too much.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that boundary gets crossed again, that they are able to defend themselves physically as well.
You know, and I think the cool part about jiu-jitsu is that if it does get to a point where a line is crossed, you don't really have to hurt someone.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if you're a really good kickboxer and somebody crosses the line, you know how to friggin' roundhouse kick that guy in the head, put his lights out. You could really hurt somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Now, of course, you could really hurt somebody if you're a black belt like you in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But you could also control somebody, and you could make that choice whether you are going to hurt them or not based on the situation, obviously, right? But, you know, like if something went down right here, right now, you could put somebody in a position and just hang on to them, just keep them at bay until the police show up or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a really powerful thing, too, because you don't have to do real damage to somebody if you don't, unless, you know, depending on, unless you have to, unless they really cross that line and push that boundary.
We like to explain to the kids that the techniques are like like a car. A car doesn't have an on-off switch that you turn it on, it goes 60 miles per hour.
Right.
I go, what would happen? They go, well, the cars would crash.
Right.
We have a gas pedal, so we could push it slowly, we could let off, we could hit the brake. It's very controlled.
Right.
Oh man, I lost my train of thought there.
We were talking about how you don't have to hurt somebody.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So another thing that, you know, again, I've had it before where, you know, whatever it is, you're out, and I think everyone has had this experience where something happens, someone wrongs you in a way where you feel that chill go down your spine, and maybe you feel like it's literally like someone came up and shot you with adrenaline, where you're like, I'm about to.
Yeah.
And you start going into you want to like fight, right?
Yeah.
You know, it happens. And one thing that I always tried to ask myself in that situation is if am I defending myself or am I defending my ego?
Yeah.
And, you know, your physical body, my belief is you have a right to do whatever it takes to protect your physical body.
Right.
But you don't have a right to protect your ego.
That's a hard thing, dude.
It's so hard.
That's a hard
when
thing.
you feel that shot of adrenaline,
Yeah.
you know, someone just for no reason just says something to you, and you know, you build up the story in your head. You're like, well, I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt, and I should be able to show this guy. But then you realize there's no, you know, we have a lot of leftover stuff from when we were cavemen.
Right.
Where, you know, that insult is a perceived threat to your status within the group, and your status within the group determines whether you get some of the saber-toothed tiger they brought back.
Right.
And it feels like you really gotta protect your status, otherwise the group's gonna exit. Like, dude, you could just let it go and never see this guy.
Right.
Because that's the ego. But the physical body, yeah, if someone's gonna attack you or, you know, someone that you love, their physical body,
Right.
you gotta protect them. And
Yeah.
you know, martial arts gives you the skills to do that.
Yeah. Did I tell you the story? Because I think I almost let my ego get the best of me a couple months ago.
We all have.
Was I telling you? I think I was
No.
telling Julian, actually. I told the story on the podcast, so I won't go too in depth with it. But So my son, my youngest son, had surgery on his eye when he was born. He had a cataract.
Okay.
So he had surgery when he was like 5 weeks old. So long story short, back and forth to the doctors. We're going down to Philly for his follow-up visits and all that stuff, right? So it was a day where we had to go all the way out to Philly. So it's like a nice chunk of your day. So you're already kind of like, by the time you get home, you're like, fuck, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. So just pull up to Red Bank, and I get to the gas station, and I'm like, all right, I got to get some gas real quick. I'm on E. Pull in. The guy who I thought was an attendant was the guy that was just like servicing the pumps. Mm-hmm. Okay. I pulled up behind a car that appeared to be getting gas. That car pulled out. And then I pulled where that car was to get gas, and the guy starts like mumbling something. And I was like, this fucking guy talking to me? This is a problem, right? He just looks like a lunatic. And just like this, like I'm always super nice to people. I'm like, hey, bud, is this pump open? And the guy goes, he starts shaking his head. He goes, come on, man, does it look like it's open? Use your fucking brain. Now I'm like, what the fuck did you just say? Right? So now I'm starting to get worked up. And the guy's like, I got my window open, obviously. I got my two kids in the car.
Yeah.
And Gab is in the back seat in between them. And the guy's like putting his fucking camera in my face and like really starting to push me. And it brought us to me saying, fuck you.
Yeah.
Right? Which is not something, like, it takes a lot to get me to that point. Hindsight, I probably should have just drove away. Right?
Yeah.
Kids in the back seat. But after that, he started getting more worked up. Then he called me a bitch. So then I got out of the car.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have done that. Like, looking back, I'm like, damn, man, I had the kids in the car. I had Gab in the car. Like, this was, I don't know if this guy's an absolute maniac. I don't know if he has a knife. I don't know if he has a gun. Like, there's so much. Luckily, nothing happened. Luckily, it didn't get to that point. Like, I got out of the car, and then I kind of put my hands up like this, like, just to keep my distance from the guy, because he was going kind of nuts. He was about to fuck around and find out. But anyway, the guy was a jerk. But to your point, I probably should have just checked my ego.
It's so hard.
It is hard.
So hard.
It is hard. Especially, and at that point, like, I haven't been in one of those situations since I'm like 21 at a bar. You know what I mean? Like, it's been a while. So I think sometimes it kind of gets you off guard if somebody's really going to try to test you, because it doesn't happen every day.
Yeah.
So when it does happen, it's like, okay, now you're in that fight or flight mode. And so it's like, what are we going to do? You know? And you're trying to like feel it out. So I'm actually happy that that situation occurred, because now it's like, okay, if it happens again, if something like that does happen, I need to know like how I'm going to react. Yeah. And I think that's an important thing.
I had I forget the exact situation, but maybe like 2 years ago, I had a similar situation where I really lost my temper because I was at a crosswalk and someone smacked my car, and I jumped out and I got into it. And, you know, again, for me, nothing happened.
Yeah.
But it did help me evaluate why that response came up in me. And, you know, I think that, you know, we have those struggles and we have those things come to us to help us grow.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the course of looking into this, one of the things I found is that a lot of times people have, it's interesting that there was a car involved in your story, a lot of car-related things, a lot of road rage. And the reason why is, again, it goes to that monkey brain that anything with a car we perceive as a lethal threat.
Right.
Right? So if someone cuts you off, even though it's over and you know you're fine, sometimes people's subconscious can think of that almost as like they tried to kill you.
Right.
And it brings this disproportionate response.
Right.
And, you know, it's important to remember, like, yeah, you know, they cut you off, but they're here. Don't chase them down. Like, you don't need to do it.
Right.
And it's so hard. And, you know, I believe that all these things, you know, happen for us. They happen for us to try to like grow through it. And just the fact that, you know, you had that experience and you kind of started to think about it and kind of piece it out in the same way that I did. Right. You know, that's all we could do from those things. We're never going to handle every situation perfectly.
Right. Right.
You know,
what's funny about the the end of my story. It was like after that, right, long day at the doctor's, almost getting into a fist fight at a gas station with some asshole.
Mm-hmm.
I get home and I'm like, all right, I got like 3 hours of work that I got to crank out. Let me take my dog out real quick before I do that. I take my dog for a walk. She has diarrhea. Big pile of shit, right? I go to pick it up with the bag. She saw, I don't know if it was like an animal or something, but she did something she never normally does, which is run back across the pile of shit. Dude, the leash kicked the shit, a big pile of diarrhea, onto my chest. I was covered from my shoulder to my hip in dog shit.
God.
Diarrhea shit. And I was like, come on. Like, if this, it was something in the friggin' universe that day, man. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell was going on, but
Yeah.
it was a bad day.
Yeah. One thing I was talking to someone about, and this is like an interesting, like perspective, and you were the person having the really bad day here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that old phrase that like, hey, if someone, yells at you for no reason on the subway, you don't know, maybe their family got killed that day or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the new way that I've been looking at this, and this is my fiance, read something about it and we had a whole talk. Just because something happens to you doesn't give you the right to push that onto someone else.
Right.
And what happens is a lot of times people have trouble with like dual thinking, right? That two things could be true.
Right.
So it could be true that you're having the worst day of your life, but it's also true that you can't, take that out on someone else, right?
Right.
So like I used to walk around and be like, and have that in my head, like, hey, if someone's rude to you, you don't know what they're going through. But, and I'm not saying that you were in that situation, but it just always, it's kind of an interesting thing to look at that, like, if something bad happens to someone, that doesn't give them the right to,
Right.
You can't kind of give that blanket excuse if people treat you
Exactly.
the wrong way that are within the boundaries of our society of what's acceptable.
Right. Yeah, you could be having a horrible day. It doesn't mean that you need to take that out and treat somebody else like an asshole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then on your side, if you're receiving that, to process it like, all right, maybe this guy's having a bad day. You could kind of look at it from both angles.
Someone says something to you, you say, hey, don't say that to me. And the guy goes, well, my family died today. You can't go, well, all right, you could say it.
Yeah. Like, it's like, well, I don't give a fuck, man.
Well, I'm sorry for that.
Right,
but that's still something that, you still need to wait in line for your ticket.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, yeah, two things could be true. It could be true that, everyone's supposed to wait in line. And it's true that, you had the worst day ever.
Yeah.
You can't be too forgiving and you can't be too, harsh on people either.
Right. So let's shift gears for a sec. So you said you started doing jiu-jitsu when you were 17 and how it's impacted your life, right?
Yeah.
Now you've owned your jiu-jitsu school for how long now?
So it's going to be 12 years in June.
12 years in June. Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, we started our gyms like the same time.
Oh,
so
wow.
I opened in 2012, so it would be 13 years for me in June.
Yeah.
Actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
June's a special
month. Yeah. So what then prompted you to decide that you wanted to open a gym?
So I had left New Jersey and I was doing jiu-jitsu competitively, and I was just really like jumped into a situation where I was doing jiu-jitsu all the time. I was working, I was teaching, I was training, I was competing. I felt that the situation that I was in was no longer a good fit for me at a certain point. And I came back to New Jersey and I was kind of figuring out my next move. I was training with, Professor Jared, who's still the one that promoted me recently to my 3rd degree and everything. And I was thinking about going back to school. And then the person that owned the school that I now own had moved on to another business. He was doing like online jiu-jitsu videos.
Okay.
And he wasn't sure what he was going to do with the space that I have. I had, maybe like $12 to my name anyways. So I was like, you know what? Let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
I'm a purple belt, but let's, he was kind enough to, give me like a loan with like a balloon payment to buy
nice.
whatever
Okay.
he had. So I did that, and I moved back home. I was living in an apartment like out kind of west because I was going to try to go to Rutgers and all that.
Right. How old are you at this point?
22.
You're 22. Okay.
Yeah. So I was 22, and I moved back. My family had moved to a place without even a room for me. So I was sleeping on an air mattress, and I remember like being in like the loft. So I didn't have a room.
Yeah.
Loft, and hearing them on the couch, like, I don't know if this is gonna work out for Chris. Like, I'm up here.
I can hear you.
I can hear you. But yeah, I paid off the loan and started to put things together, kind of get my systems and stuff, and I learned a lot over the course of the years, and it's like anything else. The more that you do something, you have challenges.
Yep.
Things come up, and as hard as any of the things were, the obvious one was COVID, right? As hard as anything was, I really think that we came out of it as a team, as a academy, and the systems that we have, we came out of it better.
Right.
So I had a lot of those over the course of 10 years, and now I do a lot to prevent some of the problems that I had from happening.
Right.
And just kind of learn from them.
So when you first when you opened the doors to your gym, did you have an understanding of business at that point?
I thought I did, but I found out later that I had no idea.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because I feel like I know for me, fitness changed my life. In many ways, it saved my life. It just became who I am. And like, I just was so passionate about training people. At first, it was helping athletes get bigger, stronger, faster. Worked with a lot of athletes especially in the beginning. And then that kind of transferred into training adults and just kind of showing them, because everybody's going through something. Fitness really helped me heal emotionally in so many ways. Had some issues with my family growing up and stuff. So that changed my life, and I couldn't wait to show people that it could help you heal as well.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had this passion, I had this energy, I'll humbly say I was good at what I did, right? But that wasn't enough to get people coming consistently through our doors and to actually grow a business. And I learned that very quickly. So I guess for you in the beginning, what were some things that you feel like you didn't know? Because we have a lot of gym owners that are listening to this right now. So what were some things that maybe you wish you would have known when you opened up and you didn't know and you had to learn over the years?
Yeah. So, in the beginning, I didn't put the emphasis on staff training, right?
Did you have a staff like right away?
I didn't really. So I was just really doing everything, and I didn't think about creating systems. I handled everything a la carte. So this issue happens, I'll handle it. This issue happens, I'll handle it. We didn't have any type of standard operating procedures. I also was only, they say that growth happens when you measure, right? So you could only improve if you're measuring, and the more you measure, the more you're going to grow.
Yeah.
I was only measuring really one metric, which was my active student count. And I wasn't even measuring it often or accurately.
Right.
Now we have so many different metrics that we track to really get a look at what things are working, what things need work, I just better communication, better showing people the path.
Yeah.
I think if you had asked people 10 years ago, how do I earn a blue belt from Chris, they probably had no idea. But now, people have a sense of what classes they should be doing and what are having written curriculums. Basically, in the beginning, I did everything on the fly.
Right.
And I didn't have everything systemized. And
it wasn't a process for it. It was just like you went in and did it.
Yeah,
right?
I just went in and did it.
Yeah.
And kind of what we were talking about right before we started is that was something that was never going to allow other people to participate.
Right.
And it's one of those funny things where you're looking around and you're like, where's the bottleneck? Where's the bottleneck? And then you see the mirror and you're like, oh no, I'm the bottleneck.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm trying to do everything instead of empowering people and giving them the responsibility, giving them the systems,
Right.
and listening to them too. So realizing that, you're not so special, that
Right.
other people have good ideas too.
Right. Right.
I
think that is because I think we got cut off when we were walking up here. We were talking about this, but that's like one of the things as far as building a team, especially early on, that I struggled with as well, because your gym is your baby.
Mm-hmm.
You put your heart and soul into it. And so I think people don't realize how hard it is to actually delegate certain tasks,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you want them done a certain way. And I think you do need to set the standard for how you want it done, but you also need to empower the people that are working for you to be able to put their own spin on things. Like, people want to deliver value and show that they're capable of doing things.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to just be robots. They also, maybe some people shine with more of like a creative aspect.
Yeah.
And they want to put a creative twist to it. So it's like, cool, in the past, I might have cut that head off of that snake and be like, nope, you got to do it this way. You have to do it this way.
Yeah.
But then you learn, it's like, people don't just want to do it your way. As long as they're doing the thing and it's within the boundaries of what you want done, let them put their creative touches on things.
Yeah.
I think it's so easy to micromanage in our industry because that's the way we want it done. That's the way you have to do it. It's the way I learned, But once you could let go of that, it's so great, not only for your business growth, because it's going to allow people to, make the product better if you allow them to be kind of free with it, but also for them, like going back to what we spoke about in the beginning, like, people want to grow.
Yeah.
When they could start doing things and putting their own twist on it, it shows them that they are growing as well.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I think that's such a hard thing to really let go of when you're in the early stages of business. At least for me, it was.
So I'll tell you too that one thing that really shifted is when we first opened. If people asked me what my mission statement was, I didn't really have one.
Right.
But the thing that I always repeated was I wanted to make Garden State BJJ the ultimate place I wanted to train at.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is there was a lot of I in that. And what I've come to realize over the past decade is that it's not about me. Yeah. It's about my students' journey and and what it is for them, and it's about the journey of my students, and my staff are all the same because my staff comes from my students. And if someone loves jiu-jitsu and they want to start teaching, they're going to find their way into our instructor programs, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not about how can Chris train more every week and let's see what tournaments Chris can do. Right. It's all about them. Right. And that was a major turning point where it's not about me. All I'm doing is I'm making this environment and I'm here to guide you, but this is for you guys and even for the staff. Like, you guys are going to work together to develop, as well. And I'm here to guide you. I've done it for a long time. Right. I could give you some of the answers faster so you don't have to do it as slow as it took me. Right. But that's part of it for me as well. Like, for example, we also now do a lot of staff training. So that was something I didn't do. But we do for our instructors a weekly staff training, and then for like our program director and manager, we do a weekly meeting too. Yeah. And then I do one-to-one calls with a lot of my staff too. Right. And in our last instructor meeting, one of the things that they came with, so it's not up to me to run the meeting and lecture them. I give them stuff to prepare. Right. As I said, hey guys, for this meeting, please come prepared with one thing that you think is working really well and one thing that you think could be improved. Right. And we went around the room and people, had some great insights, and we had some great, discussion points and kind of came up with some stuff. So they have great ideas. You know, I'm there for my students to guide them. I'm there for my staff to guide them. But this is their journey, and this space is for them. You know.
Yeah. That's a great way to look at it, man. Really. And once I think we adopt that mindset, it's because you feel like, at least I know I did. You feel like if I do that, my business is then not going to grow because it's not happening the way I want it to happen. But it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It grows more when you give people the freedom to do those things. And then you also create a more positive work environment for your team, because they're like, all right, I feel valued, I feel seen, I feel heard.
Yeah.
And I could I'm doing the work that I love to do. Plus I feel like I'm part of a team, not just taking orders from someone.
Yeah.
You know, I think that was one of my downfalls, you know, several years back for sure.
I know that I've grown a lot from teaching, right? There's that yin and yang of teacher student, where, you know, within a teacher is a little bit of a student, and within a student is a little bit of a teacher.
Right.
And what I hope is that for my students that do become instructors, that they could experience that same growth too, that they can, you know, even off the mats, they could build a relationship with a student, and maybe that student reach out to them because they need some type of support, and they grow from helping someone through something difficult.
Right.
Or that they, you know, I hope that they have challenges that I don't step in to save them from, so that they're able to grow from them too.
Yeah.
I'm there, you know, for my staff when they have a problem. I'm there for them to come to me, and I'll guide them. I'll say, well, I had something similar. What do you think you should do? You
right.
know?
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I would never want to rob. There's a phrase, the worst thing that you could do for the people that you love is do the things for them that they could and should be doing themselves.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. And okay, so let me ask you this. I'm curious, because I come from humble beginnings, right? Like, I didn't have a pot to piss in. And now, you know, over the years, I've learned a ton about business. I've hired mentors to help me with these things, grown in many ways, launched other businesses now. And so I am at a point, and I'm working through this now. I'm kind of like just starting to come out the other side of it. But for the longest time, I struggled with this fear of losing everything.
Yeah.
I really struggled with it. And I'm just curious if you've ever had that too, because you kind of started around the same age as me, and you've been doing this a long time now.
Yeah.
So has there ever been that type of fear, worry, or doubt that you've had to face?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And it's still something that I have to, you know, you got to control your mind, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, your mind starts to control you. And I have to always think in that space of abundance, right? That, you know, there's plenty for everyone, right? And you know, one thing that we did a chat after class earlier this week about how a lot of times we forget that the things that we have now are something that we dreamed about.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're whatever it is, so like if you're a purple belt, you forget that as a white belt. I remember being a white belt, dreaming of a purple belt. Like I didn't even think about a black belt. Like I'm like that a black belt. I can't even picture a black belt, but a purple belt that I could picture and that I want, right? And then you get your purple belt, and you're like, man, I want my brown belt and my black belt, and you forget that a couple of years ago you were dreaming of this moment, right?
Right.
And you know, even now I have a lot of. I truly believe we're still at the beginning of our journey for Garden State BJJ.
Yeah.
And I have things that I want to do, and I want to, you know, impact more people, right? But I also have to remember that where we are now is something that I dreamed about years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, the school that I have is the school that I started training at, and it's a lot different now than it was then.
Right.
So, you know, when I walk in there and it's, you know, this big room and it's all white and clean and it's filled with, you know, happy people training.
Yeah.
And everyone's, you know, chatting. I have to remind myself that even if we're not, there yet. This is something that I dreamed about.
Right.
And I guess whenever I start to feel fear of loss, I just try to center myself into gratitude that like I'm thankful that, you know, I had this, and even when, you know, even now I have the things that are great, and there's problems, and when we had half as many students, things were great and there was problems, and then when there was half as many as that, things were great and there were problems.
Yep.
So yeah, I just try to remind myself that, you know, you kind of get used to something, and then as soon as you get used to it, you fear losing it.
Right.
And sometimes you also get used to it, and you know, you forget to appreciate how beautiful the situation and the things that you have at that moment are.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, man. I think that's important. And that's something that like I said, have been working on now for the last couple of years. And
Yeah.
like really doing like deep work around it, meditating on it, gratitude, that type of thing. Because, you know, you get to a point where I at least for me, you know, coming from my background, you start to, like, Eminem has a line, right? And he goes, coming from humble beginnings, I'm almost uncomfortable winning.
Yeah.
And that always resonated with me, because I'm like, yeah, like I felt for so long,
Yeah.
like, do I deserve this in so many ways?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that kind of like, it makes you start to think like, all right, why the fuck am I thinking this way?
Yeah.
Like, why I should be way happier in business than I am because I'm worried about losing what I have.
Yeah.
And that's no way to, like, it's like, you could say that about anything.
Yeah.
So why stay in that spot? You have to practice gratitude, like you said, and just kind of work on the reasons why you're feeling that way.
Yeah.
So you could really start to, because when you do that, oddly enough, other doors start to open up.
Yeah.
Things start to grow, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you kind of hold yourself back. You set these own limitations and glass ceilings on yourself when you think in that mindset, because of course you're just living in scarcity. Like you're playing the game not to lose. You're playing the game not to lose.
Yeah, you're not playing to win.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I totally agree. You know, one thing that we talked about with the kids program today is that there's, you know, in life, there's a counterintuitive law where, you know, you would think that the more you give away, the less that you have. And that's the mathematic law. If you have 5 and you give away 4, now you have 1. But the more that you give and the more that you give freely without, you know, expecting anything, you get more. And you have to train your brain to forget what we're taught, like from a physical mathematical sense about giving and having less.
Yeah.
And also, you know, we haven't really talked about our childhood, but I think we probably had some kind of similar things, if I were to guess. And sometimes when you have that, you build this thought process that as soon as things go good, the shoe's going to come down.
Yeah.
And you almost, just to that Eminem line, you're like, the better things go, there's that thing that's
waiting around the corner.
Yeah,
right?
you're like
expecting it.
You start checking your body. You're like, am I healthy?
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, yeah, and it's really hard. And I'm saying that I struggle with it too. That like as things get good, you know, you're almost afraid to take that tally of things that you're grateful for, because you think that the universe is gonna, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a deep belief that even when we know logically, sometimes it does creep up that, hey, things are so good that something's going to happen. And, you know, you just got to, I don't know. I guess for me, the antidote, like you said, is that gratitude. You know, me and my fiance both have gratitude journals.
Yeah.
We share our gratitudes with each other. And we just try to remember that, you know, when good things happen, it doesn't mean that something bad is going to happen.
Right.
And I just try to reframe everything bad as just something challenging, and knowing that, and again, our belief is based off of like our history, right? So like everything that happened in your life, kind of gives you the context for how you see the world.
Right.
So I try to just remember that I'm still alive. So everything bad that has happened to me, every challenge that I had hasn't killed me.
Right.
I'd say that I'm in the best place that I've been at. So with everything bad and all the challenges, I've still ended up here.
Yep.
So if a challenge comes in the future, I know that, it might be hard, but historically I've come out of it stronger, and
Right.
I think I will too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so easy to sit here and say it.
Yeah.
I had an experience where I had a chat like that with someone, and like 2 days later, something really challenging happened.
Oh no.
And I was like, all right, this is the universe, like really testing that conviction. Like, all right, Chris, do you really believe in
Right.
these?
Right.
So it's hard.
But there's always going to be highs and lows in life, right?
Yeah.
Like it's never just going to be 75 degrees and sunny every day of your life. Like the storm is coming at some point, and that is part of life. And I think the more that we accept that's like, hey, this is just part of the story. This is part of the process, and understanding that this is an opportunity to learn, to grow, to get better, to get stronger, to move forward. Because if you just let any little thing break you, it's like, of course you're not going to move forward in life. But that doesn't mean you have to be fearful of those moments.
Yeah.
Because it is an opportunity to grow from it, to get better. So now I look at it, it's like, okay, this is one of the things I was working on, was like, if the worst were to happen, right? You lost every fucking member at your gym. You lost every client in business. You have zero money in your bank account. That happens tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? I could also look at it through the lens of, but I was able to build it in the first place.
Sure.
Like I've learned the skills. I've learned what it takes to get to that point.
Yeah.
So I know that I could do it again.
Yeah.
Right? And go even beyond that. Even if the worst were to happen, like the friggin' zombie apocalypse hits, whatever happens, right? Like you'll still be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's where self-belief comes in.
Yeah.
Right? And understanding like the past and who I was when I was a kid, or, even in my early 20s, like that guy is dead.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot from that guy. I've learned a lot through these experiences, but that doesn't define who I am. It does not limit the potential of who I could become. You know what I mean? So that was a good talk, man.
Well said.
Yeah. I do want to ask you though, because you mentioned certain metrics. Again, we have a lot of gym owners that are listening to this right now. So what are some metrics that you guys now track that you didn't, that are like key metrics for you to keep an eye on to know that your business is healthy and moving in the right direction?
Sure. So, this is not going to be anything groundbreaking, but revenue, net profit, student value. So, the revenue divided by the number of students.
Yep.
We track our attrition rate. We track.
How do you track your attrition rate? Because I want to see if we do it the same way. Because I always feel like every time we have our quarterly meeting, I'm like, I think we're fucking this up.
Yeah.
How do you track it?
It's really hard.
It's
I have good systems, but sometimes I have to run it a couple times.
Yeah.
But in theory, it's number of drops or cancellations divided by the total student count.
Okay. All right. So we're doing this.
Yeah.
All right,
So that's in theory what it should be.
Yeah.
And we do, number of leads to appointments to, so it's pretty in depth.
Yeah. Are you tracking these things weekly?
Weekly.
Okay.
Yeah. The more that you measure, the more you can make those course corrections. Yeah. And that has been very, very helpful for us. And it's also, again, I don't want to be the bottleneck. So part of this is, this is the very tip of the iceberg of what we do. Mm-hmm. And part of it is for my guys that are really trying to move up through and who knows what the future holds for our team. Yeah. But I want people that are instructors or working behind the scenes to learn how to move those numbers on their own. Right. Not, hey, Chris, how do we get more enrollments? Mm-hmm. They, my guys know how to do that too. They have a bunch of strategies, or how do we lower that attrition number? They know how to do that. Right. So I there's, again, I think I've become the crunchy person that I used to like roll my eyes at, but there is that. You have to have that abundance mindset, right? Yep. Where there's sometimes business owners that keeps certain things from people because they're afraid that if this person has all the info,
Right.
they're going to go and do it, right?
Yep.
And I think that is very short-sighted, because what you're doing is you're withholding information so that they can't do this theoretical thing in the future. But right now in the present moment, you don't have as skilled of a person
Right.
on your team. So I rather than be all super skilled now, make sure we're always in communication. So, whatever they need, I'm there to help them.
Right.
Rather than be like, I'm going to go over this part and now you step out and you could come back in and you go out. So my goal is to develop them however they want to, however far they want to take it. I'm there to be there with them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, man. So you know that I'm a consultant for gym owners, and I can't tell you how many gym owners that I work with that do not track their data. Right?
Yeah.
They don't know. If you have to ask them a question about attrition rate or anything like that, they have no idea. Right? And this is not to bash them. It's just like I was once in that position too. So like for anybody that's listening to this right now, if you own a gym, it's like start tracking the metrics that actually matter. And I just think that's such an important thing that you brought up, because if you're not tracking that stuff, how do you expect to improve upon it? It won't happen.
Yeah.
Right.
And look at your gym or your martial arts academy. Look at it through the student's eye too. Like don't look at it through your eye, I think.
Right.
Is like, when they come in, what is that person's experience like? Do they feel safe? Do they feel valued? Right.
Yeah, totally. So before we wrap this up, for people that are listening that do not own a gym or a martial arts academy, if it's somebody that's just been on the fence about getting into jiu-jitsu or getting into any martial art for that matter, what advice do you have for that person?
I would recommend that they give it a try, and it doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu, right? So whatever interests you, whether it's Tai Chi, whether it's Muay Thai, whether it's karate, or if it's jiu-jitsu, the particular techniques and the style, that's about your interest. But as long as you're doing martial arts in some sense, you're going to experience the growth from it. And I wouldn't tell someone like, hey, jiu-jitsu is the only one. Jiu-jitsu is the one that I've put the most time into, and I've really experienced a lot from it. But I would get involved in it, and one of the things about martial arts is it's so cross age, cross culture. You could see at my school the youngest are 4 years old, doing takedowns to each other, bowing on and off the mat. And then you could see people that are 80, 90 years old doing Tai Chi. There's people in their 30s and 40 doing Muay Thai. So, at any age, at any style, if you're looking for something to improve and to work towards, the Japanese idea of Kaizen, a little improvement every day.
Yeah.
Any martial art can provide that. I think that if you find the right environment and you find the right guide, right? So you find the right coach that's going to guide you on your journey, it could be tremendous for personal development.
Amazing. Are there any, I don't know if you know any horror stories or any red flags for people to look out for in certain martial arts gyms? Because I've heard some, never like personally, you kind of hear it like through the grapevine.
Yeah.
But
I would say that, you should always feel safe.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a very broad term, but you should feel safe. You shouldn't feel that if you raise a hand and ask a question, they're going to make you feel like you asked a stupid question.
Right.
And you shouldn't feel like you're going to get hurt, physically training.
Do you feel like I ask a lot of stupid questions? It's like no comment. Yeah.
No, you ask great questions. And I love our training sessions too.
Yeah.
You're mostly the morning.
Yeah.
And those are so fun because it's it's daylight and we have plenty of time, and we typically in the evening we have multiple classes going on at the same time.
Yeah.
In the morning it's just one class at a time, and we're able to go. And I love questions, right? So again, questions are you taking ownership of your own journey.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not, so, martial arts, I do have to come with a curriculum and show you stuff, because sometimes people don't know what they need to ask.
Right.
But when someone does ask a question in class, that's someone who's saying, hey, I want to take a little bit of ownership of my own training. I'm interested in this. I've noticed this. And that's where a lot of the growth is going to happen, where you start to craft your own training, and then just use your instructor as a guide. Hey, what could I do here?
Right.
Rather than I'm going to sit and just hear whatever you came with. So I love questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
keep them coming.
That's his
Chris.
way of making me feel a little bit better, guys. Okay. Awesome. Well, Chris, this was awesome, man. Again, I appreciate you coming on and taking time.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Where could everybody find you if they want to follow you on social media, or if they ever want to try out your gym?
Yeah, it's super easy. It's Garden State BJJ on Instagram. And then if you want to check out the website, all you do is you put your info in there, and you could do a free trial class. And that's just gardenstatebjj.com.
We should tell them the address of the place too.
Yeah, it's 336 Highway 35 in Red Bank, but it's actually the Middletown Fire Department building. So we're up on the second floor, right across from Whole Foods.
There you go. All right, Chris, thank you again.
Thanks
Appreciate
again, man.
you, brother.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And guys, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you give Chris a follow, and we'll see you next time. All right.